Everyone knows the Fourth Crusade went sideways. Constantinople sacked in 1204. Latin Empire born from the ashes. Knights in plate armor claiming God's will while pocketing Byzantine gold. But here's what nobody talks about. 1 year later, April 14 to 1205, outside the city walls of Adrianople, the entire Latin dream breaks. 300 armored knights, the best heavy cavalry in Christendom. Gone in a day, Emperor Baldwin I, crowned just months before, dragged off in chains to rot in a Bulgarian tower. How does an upstart empire lose its emperor and its army before its first birthday? How do 14,000 Cuman horse archers and 40,000 Bulgarians destroy the force that took Constantinople? What happens when Western steel meets Eastern arrows in marshland that swallows horses whole? The Latin Empire needed land. Baldwin I, Count of Flanders, crowned emperor in May 1204 at Ar, controlled Constantinople and scraps of Thrace. Not enough. Boniface of Montferrat got Macedonia and the title King of Thessalonica. Everyone wanted more. Winter 1204 into 1205 at Greek aristocrats in Thrace saw their chance. Latin knights pillaging villages, demanding submission. The Greeks sent messengers north to Tsar Kaloyan of Bulgaria. "We'll submit to you," they said, "if you kick out the Franks." Kaloyan married to a Cuman princess named Anna, already crowned by Pope Innocent III in November 1204 with the title Rex, though he kept calling himself Tsar. He'd offered the Crusaders an alliance against Byzantium before Constantinople fell. They rejected him. Told him they owned everything the old empire touched, including Bulgaria. Spring 1205, Didymotaiso revolts, then Adrianople, then all of Thrace lights up. Baldwin marches north at the end of March, with Count Louis I of Blois, Doge Enrico Dandolo of Venice, Geoffrey of Villehardouin the Marshal. They reach Adrianople March 29 and set up siege engines. For days they accomplish nothing because the walls won't crack. April 10th, 1205, Kaloyan camps 25 kilometers northeast with an army Geoffrey of Villehardouin numbers at 54,000. Bulgarians, Vlachs, who rose with the Bulgarians in the rebellion of 1185, 14,000 Cumans, unbaptized, riding with composite bows and spare horses. Villehardouin's chronicle, written in 1207, calls them the best source we have because he was there. Chronicles of the Fourth Crusade and the conquest of Constantinople, published in Old French prose. Eyewitness account of a marshal who helped plan the whole campaign and watched it implode outside Adrianople. The Latin force under the walls, maybe 4,000 total, 300 knights, infantry and Venetian contingents between 1 and 1,500 each. Not clear how many stayed to continue the siege when the fighting started. April 13th, test attack. Kaloyan sends the Cuman cavalry forward to scout and provoke. They hit the Latin camp fast. Baldwin and his knights counterattack. The Cumans wheel around, apparently fleeing. The knights chase. Classic mistake. The Cumans ride light, composite bows in hand, shooting backward over their saddles as they retreat. Parthian shot. They keep 10 to 12 reserve horses per rider, so a fresh mount is always ready. The knights in full plate on war horses bred for shock can't keep pace. After a long chase, the Cumans pivot, loose volleys into the stampeding Latins, kill men and horses. Then they vanish. Baldwin realizes the trap, but too late. He calls a council that night, every baron and leader present. Decision made. If the Cumans attack again, hold a battle line in front of camp. Do not pursue. Do not break formation. If you value documented medieval history and tactical warfare like this, subscribe. It's the best way to support our work. Also comment from which city you're hearing this from. This script is researched and factual, using sources from Geoffrey of Villehardouin's Chronicles of the Fourth Crusade, one of the earliest French prose narratives. Written 1207 and available through the Medieval Sourcebook at Fordham University, published online since 1998. And Nicetas Choniets, Byzantine historical accounts, cross-referenced with modern scholarship, from the Journal of Medieval Military Histories, Analysis of Adrianople, published by Cambridge, in the volume edited by Rogers, De Vries, and France. Now back to the information. Thursday, April 14, 1205. Catholic Easter. Morning Mass in the Latin camp. Celebration. Then the Cumans hit again. Arrows. Yelling. Steel ringing off armor. Sweeping attack with loud war cries designed to provoke. The knights arm up, mount, form battle line. Count Louis of Blois breaks, ignores last night's plan, charges after the Cumans with his battalion, sends a messenger to Baldwin, urging him to follow. The other units see Louis moving and follow. Rage blinds discipline. The trap is set, and they walk into it. While the Latins slept the night before, the Bulgarians dug wolf pits, Traus de Loup in French sources, Pits with sharpened stakes angled to snap horse legs and break formations. Kaloyan placed his infantry forward with heavy cavalry in reserve, positioned them in ravines and defiles north of Adrianople. Niketas Choniets, Byzantine historian who lived through this, writes that Kaloyan hid his army in the narrows, crept through steep places to the highlands, made sure the Latins didn't see. Another source says shadowy forests. Alberic of Trois Fontaines, a medieval chronicler, describes the ambush site as plentiful with water marshes. The Cumans lure the knights at least 2 leagues, between 7 and 9 kilometers, depending on which French league Villehardouin used. 2 leagues of hard riding and armor through terrain the Cumans know and the Franks don't. Count Louis catches up to the Cumans. They turn, fire. Louis takes 2 wounds, falls from his horse. John of Friese, one of his knights, dismounts and lifts him back into the saddle. Louis's men beg him to retreat. "Sir, you're wounded in 2 places. Leave the field." Louis refuses. "The Lord God forbid I flee and abandon the emperor." The Cumans and Vlachs close in. Then the Bulgarian heavy cavalry charges from the ravines. The Latins are isolated in 2 groups. Louis in front, Baldwin coming up behind with 200 more knights trying to break through. Kaloyan's men use hooked pole arms and ropes to pull knights from their saddles. Once unhorsed, hammers and axes finish them. The Parthian arrows from the Cumans never stop. Niketas Choniets writes that one Latin was surrounded by many, throats of the stiff-necked exposed to the scimitar or the noose, many horses mutilated. As the Cumans fell upon them like a never-ending black cloud, they could not disentangle themselves or find any means of escape. The fight drags into evening. Surrounded Latins with broken formations and no coordination still putting up resistance, but it's over. The heavy cavalry, the elite of the Latin Empire, wiped out. Count Louis of Blois dies on the field. Bishop Peter of Bethlehem, dead. Stephen of Perche, brother to Count Geoffrey of Perche, dead. Renaud of Montmirail, brother to the Count of Nevers, dead. Matthew of Wallencourt, Robert of Ronsois, John of Friese, Walter of Neuilly, Ferry of Yare and his brother John, Eustace of Humont and his brother John, Baldwin of Neuville. All dead. Most of the 300 knights gone. Baldwin I, Latin Emperor of Constantinople, Count of Flanders, Count of Hainaut, crowned May 1204, captured alive, taken to Veliko Tarnovo, the Bulgarian capital called Tarnovgrad then, locked in a tower. The survivors flee back to camp. Doge Enrico Dandolo, 90 years old, blind or near blind, leads the remnants in retreat toward Constantinople. He dies of exhaustion during the march. Geoffrey the Marshal of Champagne and Manasses of Lille, who stayed to guard the camp gates. Evacuate what's left. The siege of Adrianople lifts. The Greeks inside the walls hold. Baldwin's tower still stands in Veliko Tarnovo, Tsarevet's fortress, southeast section, overlooking the Frankish quarter called Frankisar. The current structure rebuilt in 1930 by architect Alexander Reshenov, based on a surviving medieval tower at Chervin Fortress near Rus. The original tower held Baldwin from April 1205 until his death. How he died, sources conflict. Some say Kaloyan treated him well at first, valuable hostage for negotiations, then rage, maybe over the revolt of Philippopolis, which passed to Latin hands. Bulgarian legend says Baldwin tried to seduce Kaloyan's wife, Cuman Princess Anna, and she told Kaloyan he propositioned her when really she propositioned him and he refused. Story echoes Joseph and Potiphar's wife. George Acropolites, Byzantine historian, reports Kaloyan had Baldwin's skull made into a drinking cup. Same fate as Byzantine Emperor Nicephorus I, almost 400 years before. Kaloyan wrote to Pope Innocent III reporting Baldwin died in prison. July 1206, the Latins in Constantinople finally get reliable word: Baldwin is dead. His brother Henry crowned Emperor August 20th, 1206. Burial 39 in the Church of the Holy 40 Martyrs in Tarnovo. Skull with damage to the head from youth. Forensic examination shows trauma that may have pressed against the brain, caused pain, triggered outbursts of rage. Signet ring found with the burial bearing the inscription Kaloyan's ring. Modern reconstruction of Kaloyan's face based on the skull shows a man born around 1170, ruling from 1197 to October 1207. Younger brother of Theodore, who became Peter II, and Asen, who ruled with him. They led the Vlach Bulgarian uprising of 1185 against Byzantium, secured independence with Cuman help. Kaloyan spent years as a hostage in Constantinople in the late 1180s. Asen murdered 1196, Peter murdered 1197. Kaloyan becomes sole ruler, takes the nickname Romaioctonos, Roman slayer, echoing Basil II's Bulgarian slayer from a century before. After Adrianople, Bulgaria expands. Kaloyan takes Serres, Philippopolis. Overruns Thrace and Macedonia. January 31st, 1206. Battle of Rugian, another Latin defeat. Kaloyan captures Demotica. Bulgarian raids devastate Heraclea and Kinofrurian. Cities like Rodosto evacuate. The Latin Empire shrinks to Constantinople and scattered holdings. Byzantine aristocracy initially welcomes Bulgarian victories against the Franks, then fears Kaloyan's brutality. He turns on them. Alliance with Theodore I Lascaris of the Empire of Nicaea, the Byzantine successor state in Asia Minor. April in 1207, Kaloyan besieges Adrianople again with siege engines, but the Cumans withdraw, forcing him to lift the siege. September 4th, 1207, Boniface of Montferrat, king of Thessalonica, former leader of the Fourth Crusade, killed in a Bulgarian ambush at Messinopolis in the Rhodope Mountains. Head sent to Kaloyan. Kaloyan masses a large army to take Thessalonica, but during the first night of the siege in October 1207, he's wounded in his tent, dies the next day. Theories conflict. Some say his Cuman commander Manastar killed him. Some say Greek citizens attributed it to St. Demetrios, patron of Thessalonica. Kaloyan's nephew Boril succeeds him, far less successful against the Latins. The Cumans at Adrianople executed textbook step tactics. Repeated attacks by light cavalry archers, facing backward, shooting to the rear of the horse, feigned retreat, skilled ambush, oval-shaped stirrups, large bridles, small whip attached to the wrist, recurve bows fired on the move, reserve horses cycling in to keep riders fresh. Tribal banners of dyed horsehair, mortails meaning higher rank, pointed helmets, mail or lamellar armor, the latter small plates laced together. Khans wore iron faceplates with stylized visages, dramatic upturned mustaches, battle formation fluid, cloud-like, never giving the enemy a fixed target. Nicetas Choniates, describing a battle of Beroia in the late 12th century, gives details of Cuman nomadic techniques that apply at Adrianople. They fought scattered, avoiding head-on clashes, relying on mobility and missile fire. Western heavy cavalry built for shock charges on open fields couldn't adapt to marsh terrain and feigned retreats. The Fourth Crusade started with debt. Crusaders couldn't pay Venice for the ships. Doge Dandolo suggested they help Venice take Zara, a Christian city. In November 1202, Pope Innocent excommunicated them. Then Alexios IV, exiled Byzantine prince, promised money, supplies, Crete if they'd restore his father, Isaac II, to the throne. The Crusaders diverted to Constantinople, August of 1203, so Alexios IV crowned co-emperor with his father. January the 1204, popular uprising deposes him. February 8th, Alexios murdered. April 12 to 13, 1204. Crusaders sack Constantinople. Massacre. Fires burn 2/3 of the city. Cultural treasures destroyed or stolen. Sacred texts, relics, manuscripts, icons, archives, art. Patriarch of Constantinople eliminated. Baldwin of Flanders crowned emperor. Territories divided as feudal fiefs. 600 knights enfeoffed in October 1204, with lands formerly held by Greeks. Baldwin's portion, the city itself, plus adjacent regions in Europe and Asia, islands including Lemnos, Lesbos, Chios, Tenos, Villehardouin's Chronicles, the main source, written in French, not Latin, makes it one of the earliest French prose works. Marshal of Champagne from 1185 joined the Crusade in 1199 at a tournament held by Count Thibaut, III of Champagne, named one of the ambassadors to Venice to get ships, helped elect Boniface of Montferrat as leader when Thibaut died. Present at origins, negotiations, battles, writes third person, combines objectivity and religious viewpoint, epic fashion, describes Doge Dandolo as blind, though modern scholars think short-sighted. References. The Song of Roland frames the French army as executing God's will. His account biased but detailed, cross-referenced with Robert of Clairvaux, low-ranking French knight who also wrote an account, Nicetas Choniates, Byzantine official and historian, eyewitness from the Greek side, Gunther of Paris, Cistercian monk telling Abbot Martin's story. All four sources together give the clearest picture. Adrianople sits in Thrace, modern Edirne in Turkey, strategic city controlling routes between Constantinople and the Balkans. The Tunja River meanders north of the city. Marshes, ravines, forested defiles. Terrain favors ambush, not massed cavalry charges. Vukolon keep marked by some researchers as near the battle site, K, Jirachek, V, Guzilev, Saint Boyadjev, among them, but no conclusive evidence. The wolf pits dug overnight. Obstacles calculated to break the charge before it starts. Infantry placed forward as the anvil. Heavy cavalry as the hammer. Cumans as the lure and the hail of arrows, three-part coordination that the Latins had no answer for. The Latin Empire never recovers. Henry of Flanders, Baldwin's brother, competent ruler, holds the empire together but can't expand. 1208 start Battle of Philippopolis. Henry defeats Borel, Kaloyan's successor, but it doesn't reverse the damage. Bulgaria and Nicaea allied against the Latins. 1231, John of Brienne, former king of Jerusalem, becomes co-emperor and guardian of Baldwin II, child heir. 1261, Michael VIII, Palaiologos of Nicaea, retakes Constantinople. Latin Empire ends, 57 years from foundation to collapse. Adrianople in 1205 starts the countdown. Numbers matter. Villehardouin says 54,000 for Kaloyan's army. Modern estimates around 40,000, including 14,000 Cumans. Latin force under 4,000 total, 300 knights. The ratio brutal. But ratios don't win battles in medieval warfare. Terrain does, tactics do, the Cumans. Understanding that heavy cavalry needs flat ground and clear sight lines. Marshes negate charge momentum. Ravines hide reserves. Forested narrows channel the enemy into kill zones. The Latins, thinking in terms of pitched battles, shield walls, cavalry wedges. The Bulgarians and Cumans, thinking in terms of harassment, exhaustion, ambush. Two military cultures collide, and only one adapts to the ground. Kaloyan, born around 1170. Spent late 1180s as a hostage in Constantinople after Byzantium captured his brother Asen's wife in the campaign of 1187 and sued for peace. Bulgaria recognized as independent in the truce, but Kaloyan held as insurance. Returns home when brothers consolidate power. 1196. Asen murdered by cousin Ivanko, who tries to take the throne. Peter drives him out but gets murdered himself, 1197, by unknown conspirators. Kaloyan inherits chaos, rebellious lords, Byzantine agents. He allies with Ivanko, now holding autonomous territory in the Rhodope Mountains, and Dobromir Chrysos in Macedonia. Captures Branicevo, Velbuzd, Skopje, Prizren. From Byzantines around 1198, Pope Innocent's envoy arrives December 1199 with a letter. Innocent says Kaloyan's forefathers came from Rome. Kaloyan replies, calling himself Emperor of Bulgarians and Flax, asks for imperial crown and autocephalous church under papal authority. March 1201, Kaloyan and Cumans attack Byzantine lands again, destroys Constantia, captures Varna, supports rebellions of Dobromir Chrysos and Manuel Kamitzes against Alexios III, but both defeated. Peace treaty with Alexios late 1201 or 1202. Kaloyan withdraws from Thrace. 1202. Kaloyan supports Stefan Nemanjic of Serbia against Stefan's brother Vukan, allows Cumans to invade Serbia, invades himself, captures Nice in 1203. King Emmerich of Hungary, claiming overlordship of those lands, sends troops. Pope urges peace. September 1203's Bashu. Papal envoy gives cloth to Basil I, head of Bulgarian Church, confirming his rank as archbishop but not patriarch. Kaloyan writes again to Rome, asking for cardinals to crown him emperor. Complains Hungary took 5 Bulgarian bishoprics, wants papal mediation on borders. Calls himself Emperor of the Bulgarians in the letter. Pope won't grant imperial title, sends the crown anyway. November 8th, 1204. Papal legate crowns Kaloyan king of the Bulgarians and Vlachs. Kaloyan keeps using Tsar. When the Latins settle in Constantinople and claim Bulgarian lands, Kaloyan shifts alliances. Winter 1204 to 1205 darn. Greek messengers visit him. Alliance formed. Spring 1205. Revolts begin. The stage set for Adrianople. Everything converges. Latin arrogance. Bulgarian resentment. Cuman mobility. Greek desperation. Marshy terrain. Easter timing that makes the Cumans attack on a holy day feel like sacrilege. Stoking Latin rage past the point of tactical sense. If you're still watching, this is your reminder to subscribe and comment where you're watching from. The research here pulls from multiple academic sources to ensure accuracy. Cross-checking Villehardouin's chronicles published in the Memoirs of the Crusades, translated by Frank Marzials in 1908 for J. M. Denton, London, available through Internet Archive and Project Gutenberg, against Byzantine sources and modern battlefield analysis. Adrianople is one of the clearest examples we have of Cuman tactics, because Villehardouin was there and wrote it down within 2 years. Count Louis, breaking formation, seals the fate. Villehardouin mentions him specifically. Louis chases the Cumans 2 leagues, catches them, they turn and shoot. He takes 2 wounds. John of Friese puts him back on his horse. Louis refuses to retreat, dies on the field. His decision to ignore the council's plan from the night before cascades. Other battalions see him moving, assume the attack is authorized, follow. Baldwin has no choice but to support or watch his army fragment. He commits the remaining 200 knights. Both groups get surrounded. The Bulgarian infantry holds the center. The heavy cavalry charges from concealment. The Cumans never stop circling and shooting. Hooked polearms, ropes, pulling knights down. Once a knight is on the ground in full armor in marshy terrain, he can't get up fast enough. Hammers to the helmet, axes through gaps in the plate. The horse is mutilated so they can't carry anyone away. No retreat possible. Fight until dark or die. Villehardouin survives because he stayed at the camp with Manasses of Lille, guarding the gates. When he sees the disaster, he issues from camp with all available men, but too late. The field already lost. He orders Manasses to follow, organizes the retreat. Without Geoffrey's presence of mind, the entire Latin army might have been captured or killed instead of just most of the knights. He writes his chronicle to explain what happened, defend the leaders, decisions where possible, document the disaster. His account self-serving in places. He was part of the leadership that made the strategic errors, but the tactical details check out against other sources. Nikitas Choniates, writing from the Byzantine perspective, gleeful about Latin defeat, calls them stiff-necked, describes Cumans as a never-ending black cloud, says the flower of the Latin host fell. His rhetoric exaggerated, but the outcome confirmed by all sources. Baldwin captured, held in Tarnovrad, dead within a year. Whether executed, murdered in rage, or died of wounds or illness, the result the same. Latin Empire loses its founding emperor 14 months after Constantinople falls. Baldwin's daughters inherit Flanders. Jeanne, born 1200 in Valenciennes, succeeds her father as Countess of Flanders in Hainaut, February 1206, when news of his death reaches home. Her uncle Philippe, Marquis of Namur, serves as regent. Philippe II of France demands the Countess and her sister sent to Paris for education. King Philippe arranges Jeanne's marriage. 1225, a man appears in Flanders, claiming to be Baldwin returned from captivity. Claim, entangled in rebellions against Jane's rule. People who knew Baldwin before the Crusade meet the pretender, reject his claim. Executed 1226. The tower in Veliko Tarnovo, named Baldwin's Tower, overlooks the water source outside the city walls, southeast of the fortress, near the Frankisarska Gate. Medieval tower guarded water tanks, connected to filtering pit via southern staircase, 1.75 meters wide, closed between parallel walls. The fortress wall of Zarovets Hill runs 1.1 kilometers, reaches 10 meters height on top of natural hill slopes, 2.4 to 3.6 meters wide, southeast section most vulnerable despite Baldwin's tower protection. Total fortress area covers Zarovets Hill, patriarchal complex at the summit over 3,000 square meters. Patriarchal church rebuilt 1981 on earlier foundations. Frescoes added 1985, depicting Second Bulgarian Empire history. First restoration efforts began 1930 under Czech-Bulgarian scientist Karel Skorpel, who started archaeological research 1886. Main gate reconstructed first, then Baldwin's Tower in the 30s. Socialist era intensified reconstruction work. The Frankish Quarter, or Frankisar, sits southeast of the fortress wall, name long believed to come from Western European merchants trading in medieval Tarnovrad. 2010 excavations by archaeologist Evgeny Dermangiev suggest the name actually stems from Latin prisoners or settlers after Adrianople. Monastery of the Mother of God, discovered 2014 by Professor Hitko Vachev. Renewed excavations, 2015 uncover monastery dining room. Additional structures. Vachev believes his team might find ruins of Dormition of the Mother of God Monastery or Holy Mother of God Hodegetria Monastery at the foot of Zarovets Hill under Baldwin's Tower. Pope Innocent III, organizing the Fourth Crusade, horrified when it sacks Constantinople instead of liberating Jerusalem, excommunicates the Crusaders for taking Zara, lifts excommunication when they pledge to continue to the Holy Land. They never do. The conquest of Constantinople splits Christendom, Orthodox Christians under Latin rule. Patriarchate eliminated, Bulgaria becomes center of Orthodox Christianity in the region. Kalayan's negotiations with Rome complex, seeking recognition and crown while maintaining Orthodox faith among his people. The 14,000 unbaptized Cumans Villehardouin mentions. Pagan or Tengriist, steppe nomads fighting as mercenaries or allies via Kaloyan's marriage to Anna. Their lack of Christian identity makes Latin chroniclers emphasize it. Barbarian hordes in the narrative. But the Cuman's sophisticated cavalry culture, political entities across the Pontic steppe, intermarried with Rus princes, Hungarian kings, Bulgarian czars. Western sources dismiss them, Eastern sources recognize their power. The Battle of Adrianople forces the Latin Empire into permanent defense. Henry of Flanders fights competently east Pavtromdaunuangs, makes peace where possible, holds territory against Bulgaria and Nicaea, 1200, 7 to 1212. He stabilizes the empire, dies 1216. Peter of Courtenay succeeds, captured by Theodore Komnenos Ducas of Epirus, 1217, dies in captivity. Yolanda, Peter's wife, regent for son Robert. Robert rules 1219 to 1228. Baldwin II, son of Yolanda and Peter, crowned 1231 as child. John of Brienne as co-emperor and regent, 1237. Baldwin comes of age, empire shrinking. 1261, Michael VIII. Palaiologos takes Constantinople back for Nicaea. Baldwin flees to Italy, tries to raise support for reconquest, fails, dies 1273 in exile. Latin Empire erased, Bulgaria under Kaloyan peaks, under Boril. 1200, 7 to 1218, decline. Ivan Asen II, 1218 to 1241, restores power, expands again, but never to Kaloyan's extent. Cuman confederations fragment over 13th century. Mongol invasions, 1237 to 1242, destroy Cuman political structures. Survivors flee west into Hungary, south into Bulgaria and Byzantium, absorbed into local populations. By 1300, Cumans as independent force gone. But at Adrianople in 1205, they demonstrate why steppe cavalry dominated Eurasian warfare for centuries. Villehardouin lists the dead. Bishop Peter of Bethlehem, ecclesiastical authority with the army. Stephen of Perche, high nobility, brother of a count. Renaud of Montmirail, same. Matthew of Wallencourt, Robert of Ronsois, John of Friese, who dismounted to save Count Louis, then died anyway, Walter of Neuilly, Ferry of Yerres, his brother John, Eustace of Humont, his brother John, Baldwin of Neuville. He writes the book does not mention all by name. Implication? Hundreds more. 300 knights reduced to survivors countable on fingers. Infantry and Venetian forces take losses too, but Villehardouin focuses on the knights because that's the military elite, the shock troops, the core of Latin power. Losing them in one battle cripples offensive capability for years. Doge, Enrico Dandolo, aged 90 or more, blind or near blind, master politician and financier, architect of the Venetian takeover of Constantinople, dies retreating from Adrianople. Exhaustion. The man who convinced the Crusaders to take Zara, then Constantinople, who negotiated the partition of the Byzantine Empire, giving Venice 3/8, including key ports and islands, dies fleeing Bulgarians and Cumans, buried in Hagia Sophia initially. After 1261 reconquest, his remains possibly removed, location now unknown. His death removes the strategic mind holding the Latin Empire's Venetian component together. Geoffrey of Villehardouin, writing his chronicle, uses it to justify decisions. Why did they go to Zara? Debt. Why Constantinople? Alexios's promises. Why lose at Adrianople? Count Louis broke formation. The chronicle self-exculpatory but valuable because he includes details that condemn his side. Admits the Cumans baited them twice. Admits Baldwin called a council and made a plan. Admits Louis ignored it. Admits they chased 2 leagues into an ambush. The specifics preserved because he's trying to assign blame, and in doing so, he gives us the tactical breakdown. Robert of Clary, lower-ranking knight, writes a different account, more skeptical of the leadership. Critical of Venetian manipulation, notes the financial trap that forced the crusade to take Zara and Constantinople. His version, more cynical, less concerned with defending nobles, includes details about common soldiers. Villehardouin ignores. Together, the accounts triangulate the truth. Add Nikitas Choniates from the Byzantine side and Gunther of Paris from the religious perspective, and the Fourth Crusade is one of the best documented medieval campaigns. Modern scholarship on Adrianople limited because Bulgaria and the Cumans don't attract the same attention as Crusader battles in the Holy Land. Journal of Medieval Military History volume on the topic, edited by Rogers, De Vries, France, includes analysis of light versus heavy cavalry, horse archers versus armored knights, abstract definitions versus battlefield reality. Argues Crusaders had experience fighting mounted archers in the Levant, but the terrain and tactical setup at Adrianople different enough that experience didn't transfer. Marshland negates the counter-tactics that work on open ground. Can't charge horse archers if your horse is bogged down, can't maintain formation in ravines, can't see reserves hidden in forested defiles. The Cumans and Bulgarians engineer every advantage. The Latins walk into a tactical seminar and fail the exam. The geopolitical consequences immediate. Thrace revolts spread. Macedonia unstable. The Greek population that initially welcomed Bulgarian liberation from Latins then suffers when Kaloyan turns brutal. Choniots and other sources emphasize massacres, enslavement, deportations. Kaloyan earns the nickname Roman Slayer by killing Greeks as much as Latins. The Vlach-Bulgarian alliance that restored the empire in 1185 phrase. Vlach regions pull away. Serbian involvement complicates northern borders. Hungarian pressure from the west. The Second Bulgarian Empire under Kaloyan dominant in the Balkans for 2 years after Adrianople. Then his death in 1207 opened succession struggles. The 1208 Battle of Philippopolis. Henry of Flanders defeats Boril decisively, often overlooked but arguably more consequential long-term than Adrianople. Philippopolis stops Bulgarian expansion, stabilizes the Latin Empire's eastern frontier, allows Henry to consolidate. But Philippopolis doesn't have the dramatic narrative. No emperor captured, no complete annihilation, just a competent defensive victory. Adrianople has the story, the hubris, the ambush, the emperor in chains, the tower. Baldwin's tower current structure reconstructed in 1930 based on Cherven fortress tower design. Original medieval tower foundation remains. Tower overlooks Yantra River. Legends proliferate. Bulgarian folklore says Baldwin tried to seduce Kaloyan's wife. Another version says Anna seduced or tried to seduce Baldwin. He refused. She lied to Kaloyan. Medieval chronicle by Alberic of Trois-Fontaines mentions the legend. Whether true or narrative invention to explain Baldwin's death, the tower becomes symbol, place where Latin ambition died. Where the emperor who sacked Constantinople spent his last months, the irony thick, Baldwin crowned in Hagia Sophia, the greatest church in Christendom, captured 14 months later, dies in a Bulgarian fortress tower 1,100 kilometers from his throne. The skull in burial 39 Oinks to worse if it is Kaloyan's, shows head trauma from youth that could explain rage episodes. The ring confirms identity. Forensic anthropology suggests the trauma pressed on brain tissue, potentially causing chronic pain and behavioral changes. Medieval rulers with untreated head injuries, cognitive effects, decision-making impairments. If Kaloyan suffered from this, it contextualizes the brutality sources describe. It doesn't excuse massacres, but explains volatility. The ambush at Adrianople, though, calculated. The test attack April 13th, the overnight digging of wolf pits, the positioning of troops in ravines, the coordination between Cuman light cavalry and Bulgarian heavy cavalry and infantry. That's strategic planning, not rage. Cumans in 1300 disappeared as distinct people, but their genetic and cultural legacy persists in Hungary, Romania, Bulgaria, southern Russia, Ukraine. Mamluk Egypt recruited Cumans as elite cavalry. Golden Horde, integrated Cuman populations, linguistic traces in regional dialects, archaeological finds of Cuman burials with distinctive grave goods, horse sacrifices, weaponry. The feigned retreat tactic they perfected at Adrianople shows up in Mongol battles 30 years later. The composite bow technology, the lamellar armor, the remount logistics, steppe warfare doctrine refined over centuries, executed perfectly north of Adrianople on April of 1205. The Latin Empire could have been different if Baldwin doesn't march on Adrianople, if he waits for more reinforcements, if Count Louis follows the plan, if they don't chase the Cumans, if they recognize the terrain disadvantage. But medieval command structures don't allow that flexibility. Barons answer to the emperor but lead their own battalions. Louis of Blois commands his own men. When he charges, they follow him, not Baldwin. Once one battalion commits, others feel compelled to support or risk looking cowardly. The council decision the night before, meaningless in the heat of battle when Cumans are shooting arrows into your camp on Easter morning. The religious timing matters. Catholic Easter, April 14. Orthodox Easter, April 7th, a week earlier. The Cumans attacking during Latin Holy Celebration, calculated insult. Knights already angry from the test attack. April 13th. Easter morning attack pushes them past rational thought. Villehardouin says they were outraged by the sacrilege. Anger blinds. Tactical discipline evaporates. Exactly what Kaloyan counts on. He understands Frankish mentality, their honor culture, their religious fervor, their confidence after taking Constantinople. He baits them and they bite. 30 years later, Mongols under Subutai use similar tactics at Mohi against Hungarians. Feigned retreat, ambush in rough terrain, light cavalry harassment, heavy cavalry finishing blow. Hungarians lose 65,000. King Bela IV barely escapes. The echo of Adrianople. Steppe nomads defeating European heavy cavalry through superior mobility and terrain manipulation. The lesson never learned. Agincourt in 1415. French knights bogged down in mud. English longbows slaughter them. Different weapons. Same principle. Heavy cavalry needs firm ground. Deny them that, and numbers don't matter. The Fourth Crusade's legacy catastrophic for Byzantine civilization. Constantinople never fully recovers from the 1200 forsack. Libraries burned, art destroyed, relics stolen, scattered to Western churches. Political fragmentation permanent. When Michael VIII retakes the city in 1261, he restores Byzantine rule but not Byzantine power. The empire, a shadow. 200 years later, 1453, Ottomans take Constantinople. Byzantine Empire ends. Latin Empire's 57-year existence, a footnote but the damage lasting. Adrianople, the turning point. Baldwin captured, army destroyed, expansion halted. Latin Empire forced into defensive crouch, it never escapes. Kallian could have taken Constantinople if he'd marched immediately after the battle. His army intact, Latin defenses shattered, Greek population inside the city, possibly willing to open gates, but he doesn't. Stays in Thrace, consolidates gains, besieges cities, misses the opportunity. By the time he moves on Constantinople, the moment passed, defenses rebuilt, Henry organizing resistance. The tower stands today. Tourists visit Veliko Tarnovo, walk through to Zarevet's fortress, look at Baldwin's tower, read the plaques. The sound and light show at night. Lasers and music projecting on the fortress walls dramatizes Bulgarian history, including Adrianople. Kaloyan, depicted as national hero, Baldwin as foreign invader. The victors write history, but in this case, the defeated also wrote it, and we can compare. Villehardouin gives us the Latin perspective. Choniet's the Greek, Bulgarian sources scarcer, but the archaeological record speaks. The fortress, the tower, the burial, the signet ring. April 1205, marshes north of Adrianople. 300 knights charge into ravines chasing Cumans. The earth opens, wolf pits snap horse legs, Bulgarian infantry surge, heavy cavalry crash from concealment, Cumans wheel and loose arrows, the Latins surrounded, outnumbered, outmaneuvered. By nightfall, the Latin Empire's offensive power erased. The dream of a new Christian empire in the east, choking on Balkan mud and Cuman arrows. In Veliko Tarnovo, modern Zarevet's fortress reconstruction complete. The patriarchal complex at the summit displays frescoes added in 1985 showing Second Bulgarian Empire glory and tragedy. Baldwin's tower stands southeast, the Frankish quarter below. Archaeological teams still digging, finding monastery ruins, water systems, medieval foundations. Every excavation season reveals more about Tarnovgrad at its height, the city that imprisoned an emperor and broke an empire. Geoffrey of Villehardouin finishes his chronicle around 1212. He's made Marshal of Romania in the Latin Empire, given lands. Serves Henry of Flanders. Dies around 1213. His nephew Geoffrey I of Villehardouin becomes Prince of Achaia in Morea in 1209. Establishes Frankish dynasty in southern Greece that lasts until 1430. The Villehardouin name continues. The Latin Empire doesn't. Kaloyan's 10-year reign, 1197 to 1207, transforms Bulgaria from recovering rebel state to regional power, defeats Byzantines, defeats Latins, expands territory, secures papal recognition, forges Cuman alliance through marriage. The ambush at Adrianople, his masterpiece, then murder or death at Thessalonica siege and the empire fragments under weaker successors. Cumans, Vlachs, Bulgarians, 3 groups combined. The Cumans provide light cavalry, horse archers, mobility. The Vlachs, integrated with Bulgarians since 1185, provide additional infantry and cavalry. The Bulgarians provide heavy cavalry, infantry, local knowledge, leadership being Kaloyan coordinates them. The test attack. April 13th shows him refining the plan. He watches how Latins react. Adjusts. Overnight prepares the ambush site. Morning of the 14th, executes Count Louis of Blois, 35 years old, veteran of tournaments and minor campaigns, but not experienced in steppe warfare. Brave, impulsive, breaks formation twice, April 13th and 14th. The second time fatal. John of Frise trying to save him, getting him back on his horse, dying alongside him. The loyalty admirable, the tactic suicidal. Baldwin I, 33 years old, Count of Flanders since 1194 after his mother Margaret's death. Count of Hainaut since 1195 after his father Baldwin V's death. Inherits both titles, consolidates power, takes the cross 1199, leads Flemish contingent to Venice, helps elect Boniface after Thibaut of Champagne dies. At Constantinople, elected Latin Emperor May 1204 because Boniface too tied to Byzantine politics via marriage alliances, crowned in Hagia Sophia. 11 months later, captured north of Adrianople. 33 years old, emperor for a year, dead in a tower. The numbers don't lie. Villehardouin says 54,000 for Kaloyan. Modern estimates say 40,000. Either way, massive numerical advantage, but medieval battles often won by smaller forces through better position or tactics. Adrianople won by numbers and tactics and terrain. The Latins couldn't have won even with perfect execution. The ambush site too favorable, the Cuman mobility too great, the coordination too tight. Tower of Zarovets, rebuilt 1930, stone and mortar, overlooks the valley. The river bends below. Frankish quarter spreads southeast. The walls run 1 kilometer. The fortress held the czars, the patriarchs, the aristocracy. 1393, Ottomans besiege. July 17th, it falls after 3 months. Second Bulgarian Empire ends. 5 centuries, Ottoman rule begins. The fortress ruins until 20th century. Skorpil starts restoration. Socialist era continues. Modern Bulgaria maintains it. Baldwin's Tower, the symbol. The place where Western ambition met Eastern resistance and lost. Archaeologists excavating Tarnovgrad find coin hoards, pottery, weapon fragments, architectural remains, 13th century layers, thick, the city at its height, patriarchal seals, Byzantine refugees, Cuman mercenaries, Vlach populations, multi-ethnic empire capital, trade routes east and west, the Yantra River providing water and transport. Fortifications among the strongest in the Balkans. When Villehardouin writes that Kaloyan brought 54,000 men, he's seeing the Bulgarian mobilization capacity. When modern historians revise to 40,000 boers, they're estimating based on logistics and agricultural surplus. Either number dwarfs the Latin force, either number would have been enough at Adrianople given the terrain and tactics,